Maya had always been drawn to antiques, the stories they held, the mystery in their weathered surfaces. There was something magical about them. So when she stumbled upon a dusty old mirror at a flea market, she couldn't resist. It was framed in ornate silver, its glass slightly warped, casting strange reflections. The seller, a hunched old woman with unsettling eyes, warned her,
"Beware the glass. Not all that is reflected is what it seems."
Maya laughed it off.
It's just an old mirror, right?
She bought it and placed it in her apartment, near her bedroom door. That night, as she passed it on her way to bed, she noticed something odd, a flicker in the reflection. The room behind her seemed darker, and the air felt colder than it should. Shrugging it off, she went to sleep. But as the days passed, the mirror seemed to change. Each time she looked into it, the reflections became more distorted. Shadows moved when no one was there, and her own face began to look unfamiliar, like a stranger. One evening, after a long day at work, Maya stood before the mirror, trying to fix her messy hair. As she adjusted, the reflection of her hand paused, her fingers suspended midair. Something wasn't right. She blinked, but her reflection didn't move.
"Hello."
She whispered, her voice trembling. The reflection of her, though, smiled. But it wasn't her smile. It was something darker, twisted. Maya gasped, stepping back. The reflection stayed where it was, her smile widening. Before she could react, the mirror seemed to pulse. A cold gust of air swept through the room, and Maya felt herself drawn forward, as though the glass were calling her. She reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing the cold surface. The moment they made contact, she was sucked in, like being pulled underwater. With a sickening lurch, she tumbled through the glass, landing hard on the cold stone floor. She scrambled to her feet, heart pounding in her chest. She was no longer in her apartment. The world around her was dark, shadowed, like a twisted version of her home. The air was thick with an eerie silence, and there in the distance stood the same mirror. But this time, it wasn't just a reflection of her. It was full of faces, ghostly, pale, and trapped, their eyes pleading, mouths soundlessly screaming for help. Maya backed away, her breath catching in her throat. The reflection of her face in the mirror was no longer her own. Instead, the figure of a woman, much like her, stood there, her eyes cold and unforgiving. Maya stumbled back, but the woman in the mirror stepped forward, slowly, deliberately.
"You should have listened."
The voice whispered from within the mirror. It was the voice of the woman who had sold her the cursed object. And now, it was too late. With no choice but to face the dark truth, Maya understood. The mirror had been a portal all along, and she had become another soul trapped within it, forever part of the haunted glass. As her own face faded from view, she could only watch helplessly as the next victim stared back at her from the other side, already making their way toward the mirror.